up, Mike? Stacey Owens. Okay, old Chi Patrice in here. Okay, let's get it going, man. I know y'all don't want to hear no shout outs. Y'all want to get right back into it. Y'all want me to jump right back into it. All right. Roma has it. Roma has it. Pretty gangster, you might have to look into that and see if that's some real. See if that lawsuit is real. I don't know. That's what I'm hearing. Rumor has it. Rumor has it. Down, what up? Kane here. Keo. Keo C. Jack Jizzy. What up, Jack Jizzy? All right, so please be seated. The jury is back in at 3:45, so you can expect this to go on to at least probably about 6 p.m. All right, let's go, y'all. So the government is back up. You may continue your direct examination. Thank you, Yana. Good afternoon, Jane. Good afternoon. Before we move on to our next topics, I wanted to circle back to the videos 1 and 2. I did not ask you these questions, and they are, how did you know that the video 2, which is the living room scene that you described earlier, how did you know that it was being filmed? Because I saw the camcorder. Where was it in terms of inside the room, outside the room? Where was it in terms of inside the room, outside the room? It was inside the room. And as to video 1, which was the log cabin scene, how did you know that that was being filmed? Because it was also in the room. What was in the room? The camcorder. Okay, let's move on to, we were talking about the trip that you were on with your parents. You were talking about that you were in touch with Mr. Kelly during the trip. Did you and your parents come to any agreements or conclusions about how you would go forward with the regard to disclosing to anyone your sexual relationship with Robert Kelly? Yes. What was the conclusion or agreement that you and your parents came to? They were going to do as I asked and basically stay out of his side as far as how they were going to handle the situation legally. Let me repeat that. They were going to do as I asked and basically stay on his side as far as how things were going to handle the situation legally. What does that mean, stay on his side? At the time, they had to quit their jobs. They weren't working. They couldn't afford lawyers. So they also didn't want to lose me within the equation. So they agreed to be on his side as far as denying the fact that I was on the videotape. I have some following questions. I have some follow-up questions regarding that. So you said that at the time your parents had lost their jobs. When was it that they lost their jobs? After the videotape was made public? To try to bring it down a little, a smaller time frame, was that before or after the trip that y'all all went on? Before. I want to talk about one other thing that occurred on the trip while you were in Mexico. Did you objection? Are we in the Bahamas or are we in Mexico? While you were in Mexico, Did you get tattoos? Yes. Where were those tattoos? One was on my lower back. It was a butterfly with a vine around it. And the other one was a heart with like some fiery signs with Robert's name in the middle of it. And with Robert's name in the middle of the heart. Did your parents know about this? No. At the trip, wait, while you were on the trip, did they know this happened? No. Why didn't you tell them? Because everything was still really sketchy with them finding out about the relationship that we were in. And I wanted to keep that a secret. It wasn't to tell anyone, it was just something I wanted to do. Why did you get those tattoos? Because I loved him and I cared for him. And I wanted to show and express that I was loyal to him. Who else knew about these tattoos? At the time, just Robert and I. So when did he know about the tattoo? It was shortly after I came back from the trip. When after you came back from the trip, are we talking weeks or months? I would say like a month after. How did you tell him or show him? I was a little afraid to share with him because I knew that everything was already drawing a lot of attention to. So I'd kind of just act as if I was surprising him. And I let him know I got a tattoo with his name on it on my body. Did you show it to him? Yes. What was his reaction? He acted like, he was like he liked it. But he was like, that's a problem. You can't have a tattoo like that with everything that we have going on as far as the videotape. What if anything was done to make sure that no one else would find out about this tattoo? He told me that he told me that I had to get it covered up. Who told you that you have to get it covered up? Robert. And did you get it covered up? Yes. How? Milton took me to a tattoo artist's house, and that's when I got it covered up. How did you said Milton took you? Yes, Milton Brown. Yes. How did he get involved? I'm not exactly sure. I would assume that he and Robert had a conversation about the tattoo. Objection. That's to our assumption. All right. Objection sustained. How is it that you got in a car? Wait, did you get into a car with Milton Brown to take you to the house to, yes, get this tattoo removed or covered? I was going to ask the question. How is it that you got into a car with Milton Brown to get this done, to get this tattoo done? Robert let me know that June Brown was coming to pick me up to take me to get the tattoo covered up. Did you have a conversation with Mr. Brown prior to getting in the car about the tattoo? No. Did you have any conversations with Mr. Brown on the way to the house to get the tattoo covered up with Mr. Brown? No. When you got to the house, was it even though it was a house, was it a professional like tattoo shop? It was set up as a tattoo shop, yes. And who do you know the people that were in? Did you ever had you ever met these have you ever met those people inside that ultimately would be working on the tattoo? No. How did you know where to go and what to do when you got there? Because Milton Brown let me know what I needed to do when we got to the house. And what is that you needed to do when you got to the house? To go inside. He was expecting that he had to do a cover up and to not have much conversation, and that was it. Sorry? So you were talking to on the inside of the house? So I'm sorry. Who were you talking to on the inside of the house? The tattoo artist. Did you speak to the tattoo artist, or did Milton Brown come in and speak to the tattoo artist? He did go inside with me, but I was communicating with the tattoo artist. About how long did the procedure take? Maybe about 20, 30 minutes. Was Mr. Brown there with you the entire time? Yes. Did the two of you leave? Two of you, meaning you and Mr. Brown, leave the house together? Yes. And where did he take you, if you recall? I believe back to the studio. And on the way back, did you talk about the tattoo or what happened while you were in the tattoo? While you were getting something done to the tattoo? No. What exactly did they do to the tattoo? The tattoo artist. He shaded the inside of the heart and with like a design over the name. And is that shaded design still, do you still have that on your body today? Yes. Has it? Have you changed the tattoo again in any way? No. Who paid for the procedure? I believe Robert. Objection to her belief of who paid. Either she knows or she doesn't. I can ask a series of questions. Overrule, I will let it stand. How do you know Robert paid for it? Because he was the one who made me get it covered up. That happened, as you mentioned, on the heels of you coming back from this trip to Mexico and Cancun with your parents, correct? Yes. So when you all came back from this trip, did things change in terms of your interaction with your parents? Did things change with respect to the interaction with your parents? Yes. How did it change? They were kind of wavering as far as how they wanted to, as to whether or not they wanted to protect Robert in the situation. So again, I became really different with them, not talking to them, distancing myself, and just I became out of character so they could feel uncomfortable about feeling like they wanted to go against him. How were you making them feel uncomfortable? I was suicidal. I stopped eating. It was just a series of things that was taking place within the family that were affecting me. They were under a lot of pressure, but I was so focused on protecting him that I was willing to do anything to have them not go against him in any way. Were your parents still, you mentioned they were out of work. Were they still out of work at this time? Again, this time period when you came back from the trip? Yes. How was your relationship with Mr. Kelly when you returned from the trip? It was okay. He was just like, at this point, we were sneaking contact with each other because we were trying to include, we were not trying to include everybody in our business, so to speak. As far as knowing our approaches with how we were going to handle the videotape situation. So we got closer. When you say closer, what do you mean? Just on the bonding side, like everything that he was saying, it kind of made sense to me. I wanted to protect him. I loved his children. He was very successful in his career. I didn't want anything to happen to him. And I did love and care about him. Did you all think that did you think that you had a future with him at this point? This is right after you got back from the trip, right? Yes. What kind of future did you think that you had with him? Marriage. Now, he was still married at the time. Isn't this right? Yes. How did his current marriage play into the plans that you had for the two of you to get married? He would have conversations with me, expressing to me how much he loved me and how much he was in love with me, and that he was trying to figure it out to leave that situation to make me his wife. By that situation, you mean leave his current wife. Is that right? Yes. So when you came back from this trip, this was early in 2002, right? Yes. In early 2002, or those months, early months of 2002, what, if anything, was happening? Strike that. Did you receive a subpoena to testify before the grand jury? Yes. And it was a grand jury with Cook County from the state. Is that correct? Yes. Who else in your family, if anyone, received grand jury subpoenas to testify in the state grand jury? I believe my father. In 2002, did you testify in the grand jury? Yes. And before you went into the grand jury, did you talk to Mr. Kelly? Yes. Again, when I say go in, I mean before you testified. Yes. What was the nature of your conversation? It was just about my loyalty to him, how to handle myself during the meeting, as far as being confident, how I should answer questions, just about like my delivery with the just answering questions and just reiterating how strong and stern I needed to be as far as denying our relationship in the sex tape. So then, what was your understanding of why you were being subpoenaed to even testify in the state grand jury? Because I was involved in child pornography. That was your understanding of what type of questions that they would be asking you? Yes. So, did you follow Mr. Kelly's instructions when you went into the grand jury? Yes. When you went to testify in the grand jury, did you was a lawyer present with you? Yes. Was that your lawyer? It was a lawyer that he got for me, yes. Who's he? Robert. How did you know that he got a lawyer for you? Because he let me know that I would have somebody representing me to never speak to any authorities without my lawyer being present. And that was pretty much it. Did you have an opportunity to meet with that person beforehand before you testify? Of course. Like, what kind of dumbass question is that? Like, who's not going to meet with a lawyer before going to court? Like, this lady would, I guess it's court. Yes. Do you recall that person name is? I do not. What was the conversation with that? Generally, what was the conversation with the attorney? Just questions about what they would be asking me about my cross necklace that I was wearing and just how to answer questions and how to handle myself. When you say cross necklace that you were wearing, why was that an issue? Why did that come up? Because the cross that they were going to be questioning me about was the cross that I had on my passport picture that I was also wearing in the videotape. Oh, okay. So the cross, just let me back up a little bit. So the videotape, what videotape are you talking about? The one that took place in the basement in the log cabin. So you are talking about the video scene. Sorry. You're talking about the sexual encounter that occurred in 1010 West George in the basement of Mr. Kelly's home. Is that right? Yes. What was your understanding about the cross played into that at all? What was your understanding about how the cross played into that at all? It was considered evidence and it needed to be gotten rid of. So I was instructed to bring in the cross as well as my passport that showed me wearing the necklace that I was wearing in the videotape. So just to be clear, did that happen at this time before you were going into the grand jury or at another time? It happened at another time, but it was all related to the lead up of me going to speak with them. So that was my conversation with the lawyer. Objection, foundation is lacking there, but another time, I'm not sure. This is right before she went into the grand jury. But then the U.S. attorney said, or was that another time? So she just led her with some alternative time. And then the witness agreed to it. So now we have no foundation. That's coming from Jennifer. Your Honor, this is Miss Aptin. Your Honor, we could talk later about the next time that she was. All right, let's go on. The cross. Thank you. So before you went into the grand jury, you were saying you were having these conversations about the cross. You recall the recording that was on, you recall that encounter, that sexual encounter with Mr. Kelly in the basement of his home when you were 14 years old? That is depicted on video one. Is that correct? Yes. And what, if anything, piece of jewelry that you were you wearing in that video? The silver cross. And was it a silver cross? We had talked earlier in your testimony about silver crosses. One that Mr. Kelly bought for you and one that your parents bought for you. Yes. What cross were you wearing in the video? The one that my parents bought for me. So prior to your testimony in the grand jury, as you are walking into the room, do you recall being sworn in to tell the truth? Yes. They put you on the oath similar to like what they did here. Yes. And when you went into the grand jury, were you truthful about your sexual relationship with R. Kelly? No. Do you recall the things that you were not truthful about? Yes. What did you tell him that was not true? That I was not involved with him sexually and that we had never made any videotapes. When you were in that grand jury back in 2002, did the people that were presenting materials in that grand jury, did they show you photos or pictures? Yes. Were you actually depicted in those photos or pictures? Can you rephrase the question for me? Were you depicted in those photos? Yes. And where were those photos of, if you can remember? Me in a certain hairstyle, making certain poses or gestures that I was doing during the videotape. Were they, you are also saying that they were from the videotape? Yes. And you looked at those images in the grand jury? Yes. And you were depicted in them? Yes. And did you say it was you? No. So you were untruthful? Correct. And why were you untruthful? Because I was afraid to expose Robert. Because I was afraid of what might happen to my parents. I also did not want that person to be me. When you say you didn't want that person to be me, what do you mean? I was ashamed. Were you uncomfortable with being untruthful? Yes. As a part of this investigation, as a part of this case that led to the charges today, you received immunity from the government. Is that correct? Yes. What does that mean that you have immunity? That means if I correct my mistake by telling the truth, that I won't be prosecuted. They coached the shit out this girl, yo. You know, she would not answer that shit that way. It means if I lie, I can lie again and not get locked up. That's the answer to that one. Yo, who answers that question like that? They told her, you got to know they told her they were in the preparation for a testimony. They told her to say it like that. Who the hell answers that? She sound like a fucking, like she sound like a cop in traffic court. The thing was just cursing you out at your car, slammed you up against the car, banged your head up, roughed you up, slammed you up for getting caught, and be like, Your Honor, well, at 400 hour, you know, the perpetrator, like they all like that's how she sound right here. What does that mean that you have immunity? That if I correct my mistake, no, that means if I lie again, that if I correct my mistake by telling the truth, like, are you crazy, yo? Let me just keep going. Let me just keep going. That if I correct my it wasn't a mistake, shorty. Stop it. A mistake is when you slip on a banana peel that you didn't see that was there and you slip and bust your ass. You intentionally lied. You intentionally lied. You said you knowingly lied. Talking about if I correct my mistake by telling the truth. It was not a mistake, shorty. It was not a mistake. You went through Child Protective Service. You went through the CPD, Chicago Police Department. You went through another investigation, the grand jury. That ain't no fucking mistake. I'm sorry, sister. That ain't no mistake. And you way grown enough to know that was not no mistake. That was intentional. Those were intentional lies. Well, let's get back to what does that mean that you have immunity? That means that I'm not going to get locked up for perjury right now. I'm going to throw him under the bus and he going to jail, just like Azriel Clary, and got up there and perjured herself, herself in front of Gail King 2 times. She done perjured herself to the highest of purgivity. This girl is perjuring herself and they giving her immunity so she can send him to jail and she don't go to jail for her actions in this and her part in this. At least you can do the year for perjury, shorty. Like you had a good life. You was wrong. Your parents was wrong. Some of y'all need to go to jail with him too. Like you snitching him out so you don't go to jail. That's crazy. That's crazy. Them parents, like, come on. Come on, man. That's crazy. What does it mean that you have immunity? That if I correct my mistake by telling the truth, that I won't be prosecuted. That you won't be prosecuted for what? For lying under oath. Does your immunity also extend to all of the things that you have said to the investigators in this case? Everything? Yes. Wow. Ain't nothing like a black woman scorn. that is, I bet you this dude still had money. They all will be paying their part. This is crazy, dude. And he's dead wrong for being with a youngin like that. Do not get me wrong. But how everybody that turned on him in the ninth hour is crazy to me. What does it mean that you have immunity? That if I correct my mistake by telling the truth, that I won't be prosecuted. That you won't be prosecuted for what? For lying under oath. Does your immunity also extend to all of the things that you have said to the investigators in this case? Yes. Cool. Shit. What is your understanding of what you need to do? Your responsibility in order for the government to uphold its end of the bargain. Tell the truth. Tell the truth when? Now. Here, right now. And did you also need to tell the truth when you were meeting with the investigators? Yes. And if the government determined that you were being untruthful, if you were found to be untruthful, what would happen? I could potentially be prosecuted for lying under oath. What? No, you not. You have immunity, shorty. You have immunity. That's BS. And did you also need to tell the truth when you were meeting with the investigators? Yes. And if the government determined that you were being untruthful, if you were found to be untruthful, what would happen? I could potentially be prosecuted for lying under oath. And would the government be able to use statements that you made against you in further cases? Is that right? Yes. Now, after the state grand jury in 2002, did you learn that Mr. Kelly was indeed charged by the state? Can you repeat that? After the grand jury, when you went into the grand jury in 2002, did you learn that Mr. Kelly was charged with criminal? Yes. Criminal charges by the state? Yes. What was your understanding of what those charges were related to? The videotape that we made, which was considered child pornography. And the videotape, which videotape? Which video are you talking about? The basement log cabin scene. Shortly after he was charged in 2002, what, if anything, did Mr. Kelly ask you to sign? A confidentiality agreement. What was contained in this confidentiality agreement? To be completely truthful, I'm not exactly sure because I didn't read it. But he explained to me it was just for his protection to make sure that I didn't go off and tell the truth or change my story as far as what things took place with our sexual relationship. So if I wanted to show him in my loyalty, I needed to sign So if I wanted to show him my loyalty, I needed to sign that agreement. So in the weeks and months after the charges and leading up into the preparation for Mr. Kelly's trial in 2000, the trial was in 2008, excuse me. Prior to that, after the grand jury, so we are talking about between 2002 and 2008. In preparation for the trial, did you meet with Mr. Kelly's lawyers that he was working with for those charges? Yes. And earlier in your testimony, you had mentioned that you had a meeting with lawyers about a cross. Yes. Can you explain to us why you brought up that cross and in relation to this meeting? What was that? Sorry. In relation to these meetings with the lawyers, what was that about? The cross was a big part of evidence. So they were really adamant about me giving the cross over to them so they could get rid of it, as well as giving them my passport. They were just asking me different questions about where did I buy it from? What was it made out of? And that they needed my passport with the picture on it. So it was no longer evidence. Okay. So in this, did this conversation that you are talking about, did it happen in one meeting? Is it to your recollection that it happened in one meeting or was it multiple conversations? It was multiple conversations. Would you be present when you were meeting with the lawyers talking about this necklace, this cross necklace? I was, like Daryl, McDavid, and Robert. So when the lawyers were talking about you having to turn in the cross, why would you have to turn in the cross? Why was it evidence from your understanding of these conversations? Because it was a cross I was wearing in the videotape. So did you indeed turn over the cross to someone? Yes. Who? To the lawyers. Do you know specifically what lawyers? I don't remember. What else, if anything, did you turn over to the lawyers? My passport. I'm showing you what is previously marked as Exhibit 115. Do you see that on the screen there? Yes. What is depicted in 115? The cross I was wearing in the video. I'm sorry? The cross I was wearing in the video. And what is this picture of? That's my passport picture. Is this a photo from the passport that you applied for in March 1997? Yes. So in March in 1997, in 1997, you would have turned 13, correct? September of that year, is that right? Yes. Is this a true and accurate depiction of the passport photo that was in your passport book that you turned over to Mr. Kelly lawyers? Yes. This is a true and accurate depiction of you in your passport photo? Yes. Your Honor, we move to admit government's Exhibit 115. Any objection? No, not now. No, Judge. Admit it. This is you, Mrs. Jane. Yes. Again, which cross are you wearing in this passport photo? This is the one my parents brought me. Do you recall any of the names of the lawyers on Robert's team that you met leading up to this trial? Yes. What are their names? Ed Gibson, and I believe there was a Sam. Anyone else? Palladino. Did you, when you met with these lawyers, what was the nature of the conversation? It was about my line of questioning as far as the videotape was concerned. Again, the cross, the passport, how to handle myself when being asked questions, how to respond to certain questions that we're being asked of me, and to continue to deny the videotape. You know, the same way y'all coach me. You say continue to deny. Did they know that it was you on the videotape? Objection, Your Honor. That is purely speculative of the lawyers. The objection is sustained. Why did you have to turn over the passport again? Your objection, Your Honor. Speculation to the motivation of a group of lawyers. Sustained. And this is Mr. Brinley on Jennifer's team, Bonjean's team, with these objections. And he's being sharp. He's catching them. To sustain, you know, this judge likes to have objections. I mean, and overrules. So leading up to the trial, did your relationship with Mr. Kelly change at all? Leading up to the trial between 2002 and 2008, yes. When did it change and how? Can you give me the dates again? Sure. So 2002 is when you testified in the grand jury. Late 2002, no, sorry, not late 2002. 2002, Mr. Kelly was charged with the state. So then between 2002 and 2008 was the time between the charges and the trial. It changed tremendously after he was found not guilty. Objection, not responsive, overruled. See, he always overruled Jennifer. So let's talk about the time period leading up to the trial. Where were you living during the time period leading up to the trial? Can you give me like the dates and like rephrase the question so I can process it? This girl is sharp. So in 2002 and 3 and 4 and 5, those years leading up to Mr. Kelly's state court trial, where were you living? So could you have been 17, 18, 19 years old at the time? I was living at the house in Olympia Fields. Prior to that, just prior to that, where were you living? With my parents. Were you living with them exclusively from the time you got back from the trip until you moved to Olympia Fields? Yes. At what age did you move to Olympia Fields? I was 17. Okay. And when you say Olympia Fields, what are you talking about? His house, Robert's house in Olympia Fields. So at 17 years old, you moved to his house in Olympia Fields? Yes. Why did you move to his house in Olympia Fields when you were 17? We were still in a relationship at the time. And he wanted me to be closer to him so that if anything happened, or basically like I was under his wing of avoiding anything with the media or family. So I was basically more so in his control. So we were talking about this in context of how things changed. Did your relationship change from being one? Did your relationship change? Yes. How did it change and when? It changed after the trial was complete. It changed for the worse as far as other women being involved, as far as abuse coming into play and things of that nature. What do you mean abuse coming into play? Judge, I have an objection. I would like to take this place. I would like to take place. Judge, I have an objection. I would like to place it on the recorder as a sidebar. The following proceedings were had on the sidebar. That's when they walk up to the judge over to the side and they have a little conversation, and they'll record it so that it's on record, but it's blacked out in the transcripts because it's a sidebar. All right, so they come back, and it's still Miss Apting or Apting, whatever her name is, Apting. Jane, you were just testifying that you had suffered some type of abuse. Can you generally describe that abuse that during this time period? Objection, foundation. If we can get a time period, what is the time period? I have lost track. The witness was testifying about the time period when the witness was testifying rather than the U.S. attorney. I would like to hear it from the witness. I mean, the witness can testify rather than the U.S. attorney. I'd rather hear from the witness. That's Jennifer. We were talking about while she was living in Olympia Fields, Your Honor. Olympia Fields with Mr. Kelly. So is that the time period that we are talking about? Yes, Your Honor. All right, proceed. Your Honor, that was many years. We are talking years. It is immediately, I think it's fair. I mean, given the length of time she was living with him, that they pinpoint at least a year. Can you give us some kind of chronological so we know when you are talking about? Yes, Your Honor. When did you move into Olympia Fields? Mr. Kelly, Olympia Fields home. How old were you? 17. And you guys started to testify about abuse that you endured when you were living there. Is that correct? Yes. When did the abuse start? At about 17. And when did it end? When I left. When was that? I was about 24. You mean the girl tell me this girl lived with him and Drea for 7 years, y'all? For 7 years, y'all? And and the parents ain't getting no blame. The parents ain't getting no blame. They let their daughter go live with this man at 17. Just like the Clarys. Things people do for fame, man. Fame, man. Fellas, you want any girl in the world, just get rich. Just get famous. Go buy the cars, go get you some jewelry. All they need to do is see the jewelry, The cars, you live in nice, you could take them on a trip. You could go grab any woman in the world if you're rich and famous. Mike could date her and her daughter and her aunt. Shit, money people do for money, man. This is like, and I don't know if this girl's 100% telling the truth. You know what I'm saying? But the parents, that mighty dollar, boy. That mighty dollar is a mother. Damn. When did abuse start? At about 17. And when did it end? When I left. When was that? When I was about 24. And just in very general terms, can you describe the type of abuse? It would involve being spanked and hitting. And how did that make you feel? Horrible. How were you? Wait, why did you stay with Mr. Kelly at this time if it felt horrible? Because sometimes the abuse would come from me trying to leave. So again, why were you living at? You explained already why you were living at the George at Olympia Fields home. And lead up to the trial, you were able to talk to your parents about what was going on with you. No. And the lead up to the trial, were you able to talk to your parents about what was going on with you? No. Were you financially dependent on Mr. Kelly at this time? I object to the leading. This is just the U.S. attorney testifying. She lying. Like, yo, how do you ask like 5 questions in one question? She said, so again, why were you living that? And then she changes her mind and go, you explained already why you were living at the George. It ain't the George. She said she was living in Olympia Fields. The George was the other house. Then she cuts at the Olympia Fields. And then she goes, and lead up to the trial, were you able to talk to your, like, what happened to, like, what you was just so asking? Like, you are just testifying. You just plugging all this stuff into the jury's brain. You like telling them all this stuff. And she just sitting back, yes, yes. And it's like everything sounds true. Jennifer's like, all right, I object to the lead, and this is just a U.S. attorney testifying. I'm trying to move things along. Overruled. She can answer that. Just don't lead her anymore. Yes. Why were you financially dependent on Mr. Kelly at this time period? Again, we're talking about between the time you were 17 to 26. She said 24. Yo, Jennifer, they gotta be on top of her with these numbers. Because she said 24 and she said 26. Because I wasn't allowed to work. I'm sorry. You said you were 24 years old. I apologize for that. Oh, okay. Yeah, get it right, sister. Why weren't you able to work? He didn't allow me to. How did this abuse that you suffered and being financially dependent on Mr. Kelly factor into your decision to, if at all, to tell people, to tell anyone about what happened to you when you were 14, 15, 16 years old in terms of the sexual relationship you had with Mr. Kelly? Here go Jennifer. I am going to object to the continuing relevance of this as it relates to any count in this indictment for the same reasons that I have already placed on the record, Your Honor. Overruled. She can answer it. Yo, this judge don't like Jennifer, period. He overrules everything. And that was a long ass question, dog. And so many years in between the question. Like, this is not a direct question. Jane, can you rephrase the question for me again, please? Sure. How did this abuse and being financially dependent on Mr. Kelly lead to you not disclosing, not telling anyone what happened to you when you were 14, 15, 16-year old and having a sexual relationship with Mr. Kelly? Oh, it created fear. How? Can you please explain? At this point, I was afraid to talk to anybody. And then I had buried these secrets within myself and my surroundings. So it just really made me timid and afraid to speak to anyone about it. I was just really difficult. It was just really difficult because it would happen frequently when I would try to leave or even to stay. It was both seemed difficult. Anything further, or are we? Yes, Your Honor, there is further questioning. About 15 more minutes, possibly less than that. Go ahead. After you were living at Olympia Fields' house after the trial, Mr. Kelly's trial, is that correct? Yes. Were you still living there? Yes. And that was in 2008. Yes. At what point did you say you were trying to leave? At what point did you actually leave Mr. Kelly? How old were you? About 23, 24. Where did you move away to? Where did you move to? To University Park. You moved away from Mr. Kelly? Yes. And how were you able to pay for your living expenses? He was helping me with that. How was he helping you with that? He would help me pay the rent financially. Were there any other ways in which he helped you financially during that time, like after leaving? Yes. Yes. He helped me with the rent. And I started working shortly after that. So he helped me get transportation by giving me a car so I was able to get to work. What kind of car was that? A Denali? You said that directing your attention to 2014. Did you ask Mr. Kelly to help you with your rent? Yes. And what was his response? He said yes. Did he, how did he help you with your rent? He wrote out a check. One check or multiple checks? I can't remember exactly how it was coming through, but I do remember going to an office and picking up a check before. Did any of the checks have anything that appeared unusual to you on it? Yes. What? I noticed when I deposit one of the checks, it said settlement. Did you have any type of settlement agreement with Mr. Kelly? No. After the 2008 trial, again, leading up to 2014, when you were receiving those checks and still in communication with Mr. Kelly, did you tell anybody about the abuse you suffered? You know what? Strike that. Did you tell anybody about the sexual relationship that you had with Mr. Kelly when you were 14, 15, 16, 17 years old? Yes. Who? I was talking to my parents about it. Did you tell any police or law enforcement? No. leading up to your testimony today, however, did you tell law enforcement? However, did you tell law enforcement? No. In preparation for your trial, sorry, in preparation for your testimony today, did you tell law enforcement about what happened to you back when you were 14, 15, 16, and 17 years old? Yes. When did that happen? It started about 2 or 3 years ago. Surviving R. Kelly. They all ganged up on him. 2019. It started 2 or 3 years ago. Why did you tell law enforcement at that time after so many years? Because I became exhausted with living with his lies. I bet you she got a case or something. Watch. Watch Jennifer and them pull it out. I bet you she got a case. Because I became exhausted with living with his lies or your lies, shorty. Because you live in a lie too. You should have just said, I got exhausted with living a lie. Not living with his lies, your lies. You lied too. Your parent lies, all y'all lied to the world, to the police. How is it his lies? Nobody want to take accountability for their fucking actions in this, man. Yes, he was wrong. But from 14 for 10 years, at what point in 10 years she didn't realize she waited all the way to 2019 to realize it was wrong? So, which is 20 something years. And that, come on, man. The well ran dry. As soon as this man's broke, 2019. As soon as he's broke, everybody turned on him, man. Now, I'm not saying he's not wrong for dating this girl when she was young. Well, shorty, you was with him until he was 24. Till you was 24. Living with him until he was 24. And still was dealing with him. Wow. The parents, for decades, lying. And she's tired of living with his lies. His lies, y'all. His lies. Was it hard for you to say the words about what happened to you when you were 14, 15, 16 years old? Yes. Why? Judge. Objection to this. I mean, I have no problem with her explaining. Objection sustained. Just a minute, Your Honor. Okay. We have nothing further, Your Honor. Exactly. God damn. Pardon? We have nothing further, Your Honor. Okay. We will suspend until 10 o'clock tomorrow. Judge, I was going to, this is Mr. Brindley. Judge, I'm going to go first, Judge. I won't be long today, I don't think. Do you want to ask some questions now? I think I might be able to get done by 5 o'clock. All right, proceed then. Thank you, Your Honor. Cross-examination on behalf of the defendant, McDavid, by Mr. Brindley. Jane, my name is Bew Brindley. I'm a lawyer. I represent Darrell McDavid. I am going to, it's been a long day, right? Yes. So I'm going to try to get through this pretty quickly with you. I know it's been a long day. My first question has to do with, you said that you had met with multiple lawyers. I believe it's the law office of Ed Ginson, right? Yes. And there were different meetings you had with the various lawyers there, right? Yes. Now, the way Eddie's office was set up, there was a big suite with multiple offices, right? I can't remember the setup. Okay. Was there an area out in front where people could sit and there were offices where you could go back and talk? Does that sound right? I honestly don't remember the setup of the office. Okay. You know that there were occasions when you met with the lawyers and Darrell McDavid was in the office, right? Yes. Okay. But in terms of when you were actually talking to the lawyers behind closed doors, you can't really recall for sure whether he was in there at the time or whether he was out in the front. Is that fair to say? Yes. Okay. And you talked about having discussions with the lawyers about your cross necklace, right? Yes. The cross necklace is something that you had been asked about at the grand jury, right? Correct. The passport photo and the cross necklace is something that the state investigators knew about and they questioned you about it, right? Correct. That was back when you had a lawyer that Robert had gotten for you who was there with you, right? Yes. So this cross necklace was not some kind of a secret. It was known, right? Yes. At some point, you said the lawyers wanted you to give them the cross necklace, correct? Correct. Do you remember if you gave it to Eddie, Mr. Ginson? I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure who I gave it to. One of those guys, though, right? Eddie or Sam or one of the lawyers. Yes. Okay. And they asked you a question about the necklace too, right? Yes. They asked you about where did you get it, right? Uh-huh. Is that, you got to say yes or no for the reporter. Yes. They asked you about what it was made out of. I think you said, right? Yes. And you don't know whether they gave it to somebody to sign, to some kind of expert to look at to see if it could be regenerated on a video. You don't know what they did with it, right? No. You certainly don't know what the lawyers told you. You certainly don't know what the lawyers told to Mr. McDavid about the necklace, do you? No. You do know what the lawyers told to Mr. Davis about this case, Mr. McDavid, I'm sorry. You do know what they told him about this case in general, do you? No. You don't know the things the lawyer said to Darrell might have impacted his thinking about this whole situation, do you? No. And you don't know the things that the lawyer said to Darrell might have impacted his thinking about this whole situation, do you? No. Now, as I understand what you said here today, it's that Robert Kelly basically, I don't know how to put it. He coached you to lie to all kinds of people. Is that fair? Yes. He coached you to give false statements to your parents, right? Yes. He coached you to give false statements to whatever investigators you came across, right? Yes. He coached you to give false statements to a grand jury, right? Yes. And you did what he told you, right? Correct. Because as you have said it, he had that kind of power over you at the time. Fair to say? Yes. And Mr. Kelly, as I understand what you said, he was he was, according to what you said today, he was using this goddaughter, godfather relationship as a sort of cover to prevent anybody from knowing about the secret part of his life, right? Yes. Objection to that, Mrs. Bonjean. Misstates what her prior testimony was. What was the objection again? It misstates what her prior testimony was. Okay, the jury may remember. So go ahead. The godfather goddaughter relationship, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that you were saying that that was some sort of used as a means of, as a cover to keep the secret, the relation, as a cover to keep secret the sexual part of the relationship, the sexual part of the relationship. Am I right? Yes. Okay. So it's fair to say then that based on what you described, Robert's saying to you today, he made it clear that there was a part of his life that involved you and the secret sexual relationship. He wanted to keep that a secret from the world, right? Yes. He was a public figure, right? Yes. He had a huge public persona that, excuse me, he had a huge public persona that you have said really appealed to you, right? Yes. And that public persona is far different than what you have been describing here today, right? Correct. So he, as you have said, as I understand you, he went through a lot of efforts in talking with you to make sure that the public part of his persona was never impacted by this secret part, right? I'm going to object. Her testimony is this. Her testimony on this stands. This is just Mr. Brinley recharacterizing. I don't know what it's relevant to. Her testimony about her conversation with Mr. Kelly had already been made that of her examination. He is just summarizing and recharacterizing to his liking. So I made a mistake earlier. This dude Brinley is not on Bonjean's team. He's the lawyer for Darrell, which is kind of crazy how they got R. Kelly and two other defendants in there on this case. And the other lawyers is also trying to help throw R. Kelly under the bus. Like, it's crazy, man. Her testimony on this stands. All right, I read that part. He just summarizing, recharacterizing to his liking. That's cross-examination, says Mr. Brindley. You don't need to argue. I'm overruling the objection. This is a cross-examination. He can lead the witness. How can he lead the witness? The witness is certainly able to disagree. If he characterizes your priority testimony incorrectly in your view, you can certainly able or should correct him. Okay? Mr. Brindley back. If I'm saying something wrong, please tell me. But I thought that you were saying was based. I thought what you were saying was basically that you had a public persona and this part of his life. I mean, that he had a public persona and this part of his life about the sexual part with you and some of the other people you talked about. He talked about making sure that never impacted his public life, right? Yes. It was supposed to be kept a secret. He took steps to keep it a secret, right? Yes. Okay. That went on throughout the duration between when you met him and this all started, and from the time the trial in 2008. That went on the entire time, this process of keeping it a secret from everybody, right? Yes. And you certainly didn't hear about Robert Kelly was telling Darrell McDavid when you weren't there about any of this, did you? Can you repeat that question? When you weren't around, you don't know what Robert told Darrell, do you? You said when I was around or when I wasn't? When you were not. No, I did not. Okay. But what do you know and what you described today is Robert was involved in an effort to lie about or deny this to the world, right? Yes. One moment, Your Honor. I have no further questions for the witness. Ms. Judge, will you be that quick? No, Judge. We will go tomorrow. All right. We will suspend until 10 o'clock in the morning. Members of the jury, do not discuss the case. Don't go on social media and describe your experiences or ask questions. Don't do any independent research. Don't discuss this case with your family or anything else. And don't read about it. But have a nice evening anyway. The court officer, all rise. Let's see. All rise. Jury out. 4:51 p.m. All right. Outside of the presence of the jury, does anybody want to put anything on record before we suspend until tomorrow? Yes, Judge. Again, I would renew my motion for a mistrial. This is clearly just incredibly antagonistic defense. I don't know how much Mr. Kelly should have to do to defend the case. We have the government to contend with. We have Mr. David to contend with. We have Mr. Brown to contend with. And we also have Mr. Brindley, who completely misled this court by me suggesting that when we did our motion to sever that, oh, this is just Ms. Bonjean being so overreactive and hysterical. She is just manufacturing a basis for a severance because she's upset not getting a continuance, which of course I didn't manufacture it. Clearly, this is always going to be antagonistic and where we are. So Mr. Kelly is in an unfortunate position of having the government, essentially three different government type of entities that he has to defend against. So we move for a mistrial. All right. the motion is denied. I suppose you did figure this is a little bit of a finger pointing, but as Judge Easterbrook said, that's sometimes not a bad thing. However, it is my understanding that to have sufficient antagonistic defense, that the jurors must have the jurors must make a choice between one or the other, and that's not the case here. So the motion is denied. Have a nice day, everybody. Ms. Bonjean, Judge, I'm sorry. I don't want to be labor the point, but it is. I would argue that it is actually precisely that scenario. I would be happy. I'm going to put it in writing, Judge. I'm not going to take up any more time tonight. That's fine. Put it in writing. Thank you. An adjournment was taken at 4:55 p.m. I'm going to stop there. And I'll come back tomorrow with they got some more stuff going on before. Oh, that's going to be good. Okay. Oh, so all right. So on the next one, Jennifer is going to cross-examine the government about these tapes, these clips, and then she's going to get to and then they got the direct examination coming from Miss Leon with Jane again. Yo, this is crazy because now Kathy Leon is an attorney for Mr. Brown. So she's getting ready to testify. I mean, cross direct examination with her to defend him about taking her to get the tattoo and stuff. The dude Darrell's defending the whole passport. Oh my God. Yo, R. Kelly got like that nigga's in there like Bruce Lee, like psh, 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 psh. Like, yo, he's fighting. He's fighting. So we gotta go through that. And then we also gotta get for R. Kelly to cross-examine Azriel as well. Oh, here go to cross Bonjean. Yeah. So tomorrow we'll get back to the R. Kelly, and then he's in court tomorrow again. So I don't know. I think I'm gonna make my way out there to Chicago to go sit in the trial to give y'all my personal perspective on the energy in the room and things like that. I'm really thinking about going out there for a few days to the trial and cover it like I did with the Cardi B case. Think I'm gonna make that decision tomorrow if I'm gonna go out there. But I think before the trial's over, I definitely want to hit Chicago and, you know, go through and see what's going on. Is this double jeopardy? Technically, yes. But being that they did it in the state and now it's federal, they saying it's not. But technically, it's in the same goddamn state, the same goddamn charges, the same goddamn people. The girl said it wasn't her before. Now she's saying it's her. It's twisted. It's so twisted. And then she got immunity. So like it ain't no repercussion for her. You know, like they like, yo, come throw this nigga under the bus. We look out for you. You know, that's it. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. Man, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. Crazy. It should be a mistrial. Like the way they jumping him in there, man. I know this got to be crazy. Yeah, I got to go sit in that courtroom. I will be back tomorrow 7 p.m. Tomorrow at 7 p.m. All right. 7 p.m. tomorrow. I will be back. Choke no joke. You know what it is. Thanks for all the love and support. Please like and subscribe. Please subscribe. Please subscribe. All right. You know, spread the word. Let them know. Choke no joke. It's going to come back tomorrow with part 4. And you never know. You might see me pop up in the courthouse. You know what I mean? Choke no joke. You know what it is. We got to do a panel once I get through Jennifer Bonjean's cross-examination. Then we got to do a panel because I need to hear from the people. I love all the conversations y'all got going on in the chat. I'll go back and watch it, and then I read all y'all comments in the chat. Y'all can leave comments on the, you know, under the video too, if y'all want to strike up a conversation on there too. All right. Make sure y'all follow me, Choke No Joke Official on Instagram. Stay in tune with this case. This is going, man. You know what it is, man. Choke No Joke. Moderate this part.
Oh yeah. My man had to come through and make sure it went through.
This thing when they act up. I hate when they act up. 1 second. Put your shout outs on the screen. I'll put them on the screen.
Oh yeah. My man had to come through and make sure it went through. Y'all niggas is in trouble. Choke no joke. I ain't no joke, the mixtape. We here now. You already know. Let's go. Choke chillin', got away from them billin'. Ain't shit really changed though, I'm still that villain. I'm making money with rhyme, fuck black on black crime. Beef and money don't mix, like Muslims and swine. I'm talking milk, penicillin, y'all be illin'. Y'all be thinking y'all killers, with y'all school face grillin'. Kick that bullshit to me, y'all be wet though like Bruce Lee. And Brandon and Hearst on the highway to heaven. Man, you making mad threats and stuck in one section. I'm OBP like Naughty, making connections. Talking under your breath, get you something you don't need. 2 fully loaded Macs, filled up with heat. Nigga, you sweeter than 30 days for a body. Pop shit to these niggas, see me walk by me. But I ain't looking for no beef, I don't eat bologna. But I bring a whole cow if you run up on me. Shiesty, try me and hype me to peel your wig back like 10 cent icy. Bring it, stop bluffing, I got you threats, they mean nothing. I respond like Bond, I come through, I'm bombing. Playing bodegas, flipping Montega. You tan in the Jacks, I tan in Jamaica. Faker, wouldn't bust if he raped ya. Your chick out blazed her, hit it like Jada. While you blew up a pager, had a breathe like Vader. Your star at war, with the lightsaber. I'm here to lyrically tear your rear, nigga, you a spear. I jack you up, now you out of here. Throw me on the 600. Now fucking nigga hummy, blowing down 8th Ave with a bad bitch blunted. I take it there. Y'all niggas don't want it. Y'all niggas don't want it. Y'all niggas don't want it with no joke. Who you thought it be? Represent the NYC. Bring it on if you niggas want some of me. Have y'all niggas feeling it like Jay-Z. No joke. Who you thought it be? Represent the NYC. Bring it on if you niggas want some of me. Bronze King like the LORDFINESSE. And that bullshit y'all do, y'all niggas don't stress me. Oh yeah, and you already know, Eden War what it is. Choke, no joke, I ain't no joke. The mixtape, we here now. Yeah, Legal Hustle, Mega. You know what it is. It's choke, no joke about killing heat. Left my boo and my dudes when I saw the heat. Was gone in 30 seconds, more like 23. Took flight like Mike, number 23. Before the indictment came, I split like Jada, didn't get wet like Kane. Got out the game. I went from the tunnel, now movie making. So it ain't no confusing why you dudes be hating.